from detox and intervention right through to primary care, sober living homes, and a full continuum for aftercare and continuing care and alumni services. So.
Yeah. And you're Director of Communications there, correct?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Tarman, we're here to talk about Recovery Day, and you were a part of the one that happened September the 8th, right across Canada, but you were here in Toronto and you spoke. Well, it was a great day, wasn't it?
It was a great day, yeah. There were a lot of people who came out. We were surprised at how many people came out.
Yeah.
And lots of politicians came out, and recovered members of the community came out. It was a really nice gala affair. And we're hoping to do the same thing next year.
Well, it was something that the grassroots of it started out, well, it all started in the U.S., but the grassroots started out in B.C. last year, and we heard about it, and we were really excited, and it just caught fire right across Canada, and this is one of the wonderful ladies that brought the whole idea to Canada. So, Anne-Marie, why don't you tell us a little bit about it, but before you do, one of the reasons why she couldn't join us right at the beginning of September was the fact that she won an award. You were off to Washington, D.C. Who gave you the award for what you were doing?
Yeah, the award was for the Recovery Day event in 2012 in Vancouver, and it was given to us by SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and they honor what they call the Rally of the Year. And because ours was the first one to happen sort of in Canada, and because we had such a great turnout at the first year, they awarded us this plaque. We got to go down to Washington, D.C. Lorinda Strang and myself went down there, and it was just amazing. We were, got to meet all the people who are in the recovery movement and have been doing this work for many, many years, and just all the people who've inspired us. So it was great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So how did you hear about it? Why don't you lead us into it?
Okay, well, so back in 2012, Lorinda and I were sent a video, a little clip from a movie trailer called The Anonymous People. And we were really inspired by what we saw, all these rallies that were happening across the United States. It was just unbelievable. And we were sort of familiar with the fact that there was Recovery Month. We were familiar with the fact that these rallies were happening, but when we saw it in this clip, we just got so excited, and we thought, we have to bring this to Vancouver. We have such a focus on the problem of addiction in Vancouver. It would be really nice to celebrate the solution of recovery. So that was our inspiration, seeing the trailer to this movie.
So they actually documented their journey, and tonight she brought a little clip with her to tell us what it was like on getting that very first Recovery Day in Canada, which actually happened in Vancouver back in 2012. Let's take a look at it right now.
We wanted to do it in September in conjunction with Recovery Month in the United States. So we got September 30th, we got a proclamation from the mayor, and we put on Recovery Day.
Gregor Robertson, Mayor of the City of Vancouver, do hereby proclaim Sunday, September 30th, 2012 as Recovery Day in the City of Vancouver.
You are a part of Canadian history. This is a first ever in Canada.
People are always gathered around as groups to be against something. And I'm proud to be here today that it's not about any of us being against anything. That we're all here for recovery.
It was just amazing. Everybody, the energy there was just unbelievable. All these people, positive, smiling, happy. We had a spontaneous dance happen at one point. People just started dancing everywhere, all over the place.
We are here to show that recovery from addiction should not be viewed as a curse to be masked and hidden, but as a cause for celebration and a gift to be shared with the world.
At the peak of the day, there might have been around 1,500 people, and right around the time that we went on the march, we figured there was close to 1,000. There was people that didn't want to come out to Recovery Day because they're afraid of being seen by their employers or wherever and being in recovery. So, it's a beginning, and maybe in 10 years, nobody will be afraid to say that they're in recovery.
So it was a tremendous success right off the bat, and like I said, it caught fire right across Canada. So what happened after that day? You must have been basking in the glow of what you'd done, but I think you knew that you had caught the attention of Canada, right?
Yeah, but we weren't the only city that had an event last year. Victoria heard about what we were doing as we were doing it, and they decided to try and put an event together, and they did, and they had a great turnout in Victoria as well. And Ottawa was trying to get a proclamation, and they were able to get the proclamation, but they weren't able to get an event together because it would all happen so quickly.
Yeah.
And so there was really no time. I just remember after last year, it was the end of September last year, right? It wasn't September 8th last year, it was September 30th. And we went right into our Real Recovery Film Festival immediately after. So there was no time for me to bask in any glory. It was right into something else. But I started to get the phone calls. The phone calls started to come in. Calgary was reaching out. Different cities were hearing about what had happened, and they wanted to know how to get involved. So we sort of set up an ad hoc, I just sort of became the coordinator. I didn't really mean to. I just sort of started telling people and sharing the information. This is what we did. This is how we did it. And we would just have monthly phone calls, and it just kept growing and growing, and more cities. And by the end of it, so that by this time this year, we had 12 cities celebrating Recovery Day with events and proclamations from dozens of cities.
Yeah.
Dozens of cities. It wasn't just the 12 cities that had events. We had other cities that just wanted to be part of. And we had letters of support from the CCSA, from the Councillors Federation, the Social Workers Federation, the BC Health Minister, and the whole, our Premier declared it in the entire province of BC.
Yeah,
so, I mean, it was, it really, the whole city and the whole country, it caught on. It was amazing.
Dr. Tarman, what was the feeling like in Toronto?
Well, it was very festive. I was actually quite surprised. I thought there'll be a handful of people, because like it says in the film, a lot of people would be nervous to come out because it's essentially outing themselves. But when I was just amazed at how many people came out. And, there were picnics and balloons, and it was a really festive feeling, which I thought was perfect. I think that's what recovery should look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the statement, Anne-Marie, do you feel that you guys want to make with recovery?
Well, I think actually Dr. Tarman and I were just talking about this before the show. I think it is all about the family, right? It's not just about for the person in recovery, and we tried to make that really clear in any time we were talking about the event. It's not just for people in recovery; it's for the people who support them, because addiction doesn't just affect the person; it affects the individual, the family, the community, and so let's invite the individual, the family, and the community to Recovery Day and celebrate recovery, because there's a big, beautiful life waiting for you in recovery.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think you highlighted in the little film blurb that we saw was that it's not so much a focus on addiction, which is what we see in society. There's all the problems of addiction and all the services that are required. But this is an actual focus on recovery. And we don't see that very often, because usually people feel sorry for recovery. They can't drink, they can't use anymore. But in fact, it's like, no, there's a whole world out there that is actually worthy of celebrating. And that's great.
Yeah, I remember when Dee
that.
Christensen, the editor-in-chief of Recovery Wire magazine, came on, and they were having that event where you can go to an event and you don't have to be surrounded by alcohol to have a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that way they were celebrating. Don't you agree?
Yes, exactly. I like the focus. It's a different focus than we usually see.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people who get sober or get into recovery, they just sort of disappear. We don't talk about them. There's not that many people that are out in the public about being in recovery in Canada yet. So I'm really hoping that that's going to change, that we're going to lower, reduce the stigma and just let people know that there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
That's a great statement. We are going to take our first break here on Living Clean, Living Well, but when we come back, we're going to talk more about celebrating recovery here in Canada and the U.S. And I'd like to hear from you. We're going to throw our toll-free lines open. Were you at any of the Recovery Day celebrations across this great country of ours and our friends in the U.S. that tune into Living Clean, Living Well as well? We'd like to hear from you tonight. We'd like to hear from you if you took part in Recovery Day and what your experiences were like. And are you too celebrating your recovery? We'd like to hear your stories. So our first break, our show will continue with Anne-Marie McCullough and Dr. Vera Tarman right after this.
It's scary to think that you're going to live the rest of your life without drugs and alcohol when it's all you've depended on. But there is hope. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and treatment allowed me the chance to ask for the help that I needed in order to believe that I could live a sober life. I got the help and support that I needed, and even now that I've left, I still have that support there.
Welcome back, everybody, to Living Clean, Living Well. My guest tonight, as I mentioned just before we went to the break, Anne-Marie McCullough from the Orchard Recovery Center on Bowen Island. That's the first island right next door to the great city of Vancouver. You take a little ferry over there. And Dr. Vera Tarman, the medical director at Renascent. Just before we get back to celebrating recovery here in Canada, I want to tell you about our show next week. It's going to be a fun show. Do you remember a singer from the 1960s by the name of Bobby Curtola? He is going to be our special guest on Living Clean, Living Well, along with Don Slesser. Don Slesser is well known here on the show. He's a beloved friend, a great therapist within the addictions world. Bobby Curtola will be here right from Las Vegas. He will be here along with Don Slesser, and I hope that you can join us. I also want to tell you, the original host and founder of Living Clean, Glenn Allen, is on Hamilton Cable 14 channel every Friday night at 10 p.m. The name of his show is called The Advocate. And he is going to be talking this Friday night about the selling of drug paraphernalia in the local convenience stores. Many citizens up in arms about this. It has also caught the attention of the Ontario Safety League. So Glenn Allen will be talking about that, and he would like to invite you to join him this Friday at 10 p.m. If you're in the Hamilton area, it is on Rogers Cable 14. So back to our discussions on celebrating recovery. As I mentioned, Anne-Marie is here, and I'm wondering if you might share a little bit of your story and how you got into this area, and just tell us about you.
Well, you know, I like different language. It's interesting. One of the things that, you know, Recovery Day is about changing the focus. So when I introduce myself as a person in long-term recovery. And that's the recovery language that we're hoping to sort of, this movement is gonna change how people introduce themselves. So that, for me, being a person in long-term recovery means that I haven't used drugs or alcohol for over 5 years. And my story began like many people's. I started drinking when I was 14. I drank heavily right from the get-go, pretty much every weekend. And I think for a variety of reasons, I mean, I grew up in an alcoholic home. I was exposed to what alcoholism was, but you know, the disease of denial, the denial that comes along with the disease of alcoholism is very strong. So I drank alcoholically, I think, from the very beginning, and I drank every weekend for pretty much 23 years. I got involved in the nightclub scene. I was a DJ for many years, so that introduced me to a whole, you know, new world of drugs and things that, you know, late nights and partying. And I think for me that just dragged, you know, probably my drinking would have been, you know, it still would have been binge drinking every weekend, but because I added the drugs and stuff into it in the late nights, it just escalated my addiction. So probably when I was 33, I think about there, I met my husband, and I really thought I was going to clean up my act. I really thought that this conservative man and I were going to, you know, this is going to put me on the straight and narrow, and of course that's not what happened. And about 4 years later, I was 37 when I had my bottom, and you know, for me, my bottom came not with, you know, sort of losing jobs and home and a lot of things on the outside. It came from waking up one morning after, thank God, my last night of drinking, and realizing that I was not the person that I thought I was. And for me, that was just, you know, that incongruence in myself of, you know, it just couldn't go on. And so I reached out for help, and I asked a person that I knew was already in recovery to help me, and she did. She took me, well, she came to my house and she spent the day with me, but she also helped me get into treatment. So I actually went to treatment at the Orchard 2 days later. I didn't sort of, you know, dip my toe in the water at all. I just sort of knew that I needed to stop, and I didn't want to take any chances, so I just went straight for the treatment route. And you know, I spent 5 weeks there, and it was the best decision I've ever made for myself. You know, I got to learn about my disease. I got to find out what was really going on, and address sort of, you know, the physical and mental and, you know, all the different aspects of myself that I'd been neglecting for so many years. I was so disconnected from myself. And, you know, I've been sober and clean ever since, and it's been and just every aspect of my life has changed, right? I now work in the field of recovery, and I, as your former guest Darren says, I eat, sleep, and my life is recovery. It's all about recovery. And through working at the Orchard, Lorinda has been a recovery advocate for a very long time, and so, as I said, we were introduced. We knew about SAMHSA, we knew about some of the stuff that was going on, but she and I have been sort of working very closely on Recovery Day and now on Faces and Voices of Recovery, and just getting involved in really bringing a recovery movement to Canada. So that's my story.
Dr. Tarman, your feelings on the recovery movement in Canada?
Well, in the way that you're describing it, I'm thrilled by this because, working in the field, I'm really aware of the stigma of addiction and how we're so burdened by the cloud of addiction. And what this is really promising is to take away that cloud and to say that there's something actually quite extraordinary about addicts and alcoholics, and let's celebrate that. And we never hear that message. I know when we have Ann Dossett Johnson coming in to talk about Drink, her new book Drink, there's there's this whole focus about how you need alcohol to glorify yourself, and I see the recovery movement as a way. It's like, no, you can be sober. You can actually celebrate, even if you're not in recovery. We can actually be people, wonderful people, and be sober. Like, we don't need alcohol, we don't need drugs. Yeah. So I think that the recovery movement will spill not just for people in recovery, but into the larger community too, as a celebration of sobriety.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think there is such a stigma? I mean, it's identified as a disease. Mm-hmm. Why is there a stigma? Anne-Marie, why don't you give us your thoughts on why you think?
Well, I think there's been, I remember the day that I told my husband that I was going to be going to treatment. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and said, "What do you mean you're going to treatment? You're not an alcoholic. Mm. You don't hide alcohol in your desk drawer. You don't," what else did he say to me? You don't drink every day. So there are certain perceptions, I think, that exist in society, whether it's because of what the media has depicted, which I think is a lot of it. Mm-hmm. We see certain images in movies and on television, and that's what we think an alcoholic is. So I think we really need to work on changing what public perception is of what an alcoholic is. Do I look like an alcoholic to you? Probably not. Even when even the day I entered treatment, I probably didn't look like what most people identify as an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. So I think the stigma exists because of the public perception, because of misinformation. And that stigma is so dangerous because the people who are aware of that stigma, who might want to get help, won't get help because they don't want to brand themselves with that name. Exactly.
Yeah. I noticed in your video that you had people with signs and being proud and walking through the streets of Vancouver. That's making a statement, isn't it?
It is, and it was really amazing to see that, as you said, that people were willing to do that. Mm-hmm. And I hope that more and more, that's the idea. Apparently there's a statistic out now that I got from my friend at the CCSA, that there's 4.8 million people in this country living in long-term recovery. Mm. That's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And if those people were actually willing to, come out and celebrate the fact that they're in recovery, think about all the other people that can get help. That's my dream.
Mm-hmm. When you think of diseases, and we celebrate recovery when people get over their disease and into recovery from it. For one that comes to mind is cancer, breast cancer, the walks to end breast cancer, and how proud they are that they've beaten it. Is this where you're going with Recovery Day, so people can say, "I'm proud I've beaten my disease"?
Absolutely. I mean, there's been many, I mean, the cancer one is a good comparison as well, but I think, if the gay community had stayed silent about the disease that they were all suffering from in the 80s and 90s, their community would have been, well, it was still decimated, but it would have been much more serious. Addiction is deadly. There's no way, there's no two ways about that. So if you don't get help and get into recovery, and if you're not able to be, sharing about your story of recovery with other people, we're going to be letting our fellow addicts die. That's how I see it.
One of the things, if I can say, is to motivate a person who might be watching the show, for example, and wondering, to motivate a person to go into recovery, if you have that stigma of addiction, I mean, it's because of all of the problems that, you know, you lose your job, you lose your wife, you lose your husband, you lose your whatever. A lot of that has been what's contributed to the stigma. But a person who's trying to decide, you know, is my life really this bad? I mean, if they see somebody like you who looks good, I mean, motivation, it's much more motivating to move into something positive rather than to run away from something that's negative. And you know, the fact that you may lose your job is not as motivating as, wow, I want what she has. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show there is something that you may want that we have. You know?
Right, and that you don't have to go as far into, you know, my bottom didn't have to look like losing everything. I mean, it was still incredibly painful. There was still a lot of loss, but it didn't, you know, if people can see that, you know, you don't have to end up on the street to be, you know, to have realized that you have a problem. I think that's a really important message.
So we started off with Recovery Day in Canada in 2012. It was an idea that came up for the United States, and if you missed it off the top of the show, Anne-Marie McCullough is one of the co-founders of Recovery Day here in Canada, and we're talking about it now. So you took what a great celebration that you had in 2012. We saw a video of that. We got a couple of pictures of the Vancouver Recovery Day for you that took place on September the 8th. And you had a gospel choir singing.
We did.
Yeah?
Yeah, the Vancouver Sweet Soul Gospel Choir. Chico is there. It's a 30, they have about, I can't remember how many people, there's probably 100 people in the choir in total, but this is just, they bring, you know, probably 30 of them with them, and they were just so inspiring. They just got everybody feeling so happy, and
Are they all in recovery?
no, they're not all in recovery, no, but they're just really, yes, that would be an amazing, that's a great idea. Thank you. I'll take you up on that one.
Yeah, and then I guess you're getting ready for their march there, and
Yeah,
that's
some of our Orchard employees. That's
Yes.
Roy and Ann who work at the Orchard. And this is some other positive sort of recovery messaging. You know, recovery, we are the living proof.
there you go. And lots of people listening to the speeches. Did you have more people? Obviously.
Oh
than
yeah,
in
this is just, you
this
know,
past
this
year.
is, oh, well, you know, probably about the same. It was a bit more spread out this year. We had more exhibitors. You can see 2 of the tents in the background there. This year we had 3 tents instead of 2, so we had to spread out. But we had probably the same amount of people, about 1,000 people came down.
Fantastic. And I see that you didn't have any of the Vancouver liquid sunshine. You had a great sunny day, didn't
Yes,
you?
we did. Yes, we did.
Both
September's a good month for Vancouver.
Yeah, it is. It is just a beautiful city. We're going to go live now to our phone lines. Let's go to line 4. Calling in tonight from London is Ivan. Hi, Ivan. You're live on the show. Good to hear from you again.
How are you?
Hey, good. How are you? You celebrate recovery. I know you do.
Hello?
Hi, Ivan. Go ahead. Tell us about celebrating recovery.
Well, I celebrate my recovery every morning.
We know.
Absolutely. I live in daytime compartments, sometimes moment-by-moment compartments. I'm 82 years young, and today at 2 o'clock this afternoon, I have been sober 21,980 days.
Wow. You've been counting. That's awesome.
Yes. That is 3,140 weeks and no days.
Ivan, what do you think of celebrating recovery and having the movement that we have, the rallies right across Canada? What do you think? At the age of 82 and how long you've been in recovery, fill us in on how you feel about these Recovery Day celebrations.
Well, it keeps people sober, fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, they certainly are.
I didn't know they had that program.
Yeah, well, you know, it's shows like this too, which is great that we can get the word out so that we can build it up. It just got started last year, Ivan, and this year was the first year that it went right across Canada. But you have quite the story, Ivan, and I always enjoy it when you call in and tell us about how many years, we know now how many days, but how many years have you been in recovery?
Well, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the 30th of August of this year, I was sober 60 years.
60 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And what's been the key for you over those 60 years, Ivan?
Beg pardon?
What has been the key for you to remain clean and sober for the last 60 years? What's been the key for your recovery?
I had my last drink at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the Army-Navy Club in April of 1953. I landed in the hospital 6 months from the grave. I was 21 years of age. And I was and I was in there for 33 days, and my doctor, Dr. Doyle, I was 20 years in the Canadian Air Force, and Dr. Doyle, I sat on the side of my bed the day before I was to be released. He said, well, young fella, you better quit drinking. Well, I said, I could have a couple of beers, can't I? He said, no. I said, why not? Because he said, you came in here with almost an ulcerated bowel. And if you go out and drink, you'll be back here in 6 months, and we'll size you up to a wooden suit. Well, I left, and I stayed sober the May, June, July. I went on my annual leave in August, and I started to drink again. And on the 29th of August of 1953, I'm sitting in the Army, Navy, and Air Force Club drinking, and I look up at the clock. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was not enjoying my drinking. I saw no lights. I didn't hear any bang or anything. But what was hitting my conscience was what Dr. Doyle told me. Yeah. So I stood up and I said, Ivan, drink up. Walk through that door, and you'll never take another drink again. I walked through that door, and the rest is history.
Ivan, I love your story. Thank you so much. It's been good to hear from you again. He's a long-time viewer of Living Clean, Living Well. I feel like you're one of the family. Thanks so much, Ivan. And we're looking for your phone calls as well, folks. Pick up the phone. Tell us about your recovery. Tell us if you want to get into recovery. Tell us if you were at a Recovery Day celebration across Canada. We want to hear from you. And also, we are always here for any general questions that you may have. If you're struggling, if you have questions, if you have family members that may be struggling, we're here. We're here to help. Dr. Tarman is always such a wonderful resource for you. And Anne-Marie McCullough is here to help as well. So a short break here on the show. And when we come back, more of your phone calls.
It's scary to think that you're going to live the rest of your life without drugs and alcohol when it's all you've depended on. But there is hope. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and treatment allowed me the chance to ask for the help that I needed in order to believe that I could live a sober life. I got the help and support that I needed, and even now that I've left, I still have that support there.
Hello, I'm Ellen Campbell, the CEO and founder of the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness. As a charity, we depend on viewers such as yourself to support the programs for First Nations, women and children, anti-bullying, and elder abuse. I invite you to visit our website, see what you can do to share. Any donation over $20 will receive a tax receipt. Thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome back to Living Clean, Living Well, live here on CTS on this Sunday night. So glad that you could join us as we celebrate recovery here in Canada, the US, and we're about to hear from Mexico. Before we get back to our toll-free lines, I want to tell you that if you've just joined us, our guest tonight, Anne-Marie McCullough from the Orchard Recovery Centre out in BC, British Columbia, and also Dr. Vera Tarman, who is the medical director at Renascent. I also want to tell you about the wonderful Recovery Wire magazine. Dee Christensen, the editor-in-chief, has got her latest issue out. Dr. Tarman, you've written in here, haven't you? What's it about this week,
well,
this month?
The one this month is actually the speech that I gave on Recovery Days, and it's called "We Are the Champions."
Hey,
because it really is trying to say that there is a good side to that reckless, nasty side of addiction. There's actually a positive, and that's what we're trying to celebrate, is that positive.
And if you would like to become a subscriber of Recovery Wire magazine, all you have to do is go to their website. So just Google Recovery Wire. In fact, we've got the info for you right up on the screen right now. Go to their website. You can have a look there and then plug in the information, and you will be able to get your free copy of Recovery Wire. Let's go back to our phone lines, and I'm very intrigued because I hear that we have a phone call from Mexico tonight. Let's go to line 1. Hello there, Mike. You're live on our show. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. Are you watching us in Mexico right now, or are you visiting Canada?
Yeah, I'm from Canada, and I'm sitting right now in a condo in Puerto Vallarta. And I was going through the channel, and I just come to your show, and I was wondering if I was live, so I figured I'd give a call.
We are, Mike. And you're in Puerto Vallarta right now?
Yeah, Puerto Vallarta, beautiful day today, 35 degree. Recovery strong here too.
Yeah. I've been to Puerto Vallarta. It's absolutely beautiful. So tell us about the recovery community there.
It's pretty big with AA, and NA is got a meeting every day at 5 o'clock, and I went to a few meetings so far. It's like 13, 15 people, and a lot of people that stay here. They're like permanent resident here, and you meet people from all over the world in recovery. As I met people from Spain, people from Canada, from the U.S., and recovery is everywhere. I'm in Puerto Vallarta right now with people that I met at the World Convention 4 years ago in Barcelona.
That's wonderful. I was working on a cruise ship. I had an opportunity to go and work a couple of weeks ago, and there were even meetings on the cruise ship. It's wonderful that you can go anywhere in the world and find support, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I was pretty interested in what you guys talking about, because I remember I went to Vancouver the first recovery day, and I was amazed by how many people that was there.
Wonderful. Did you want to talk to Mike?
Sure. Mike, I'd love to hear what you thought. You were at Vancouver Recovery Day in 2012 then?
Yeah, I was there last year too. I was there the 2 year, like you guys did that. Yeah, I live in New Westminster, and
oh, great.
Yeah, and I clean in a treatment center too. Like they were part of this recovery day, and they took everybody from the center there, and I was an alumni from there. I went with them, and it was pretty awesome. I was blown away by how many people was there.
Yeah, it was great. And it was great to see all the people across Canada in the various cities celebrating recovery. Mike, I'd love to ask you, what channel are people watching us on in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico tonight? What channel is it?
I have no idea. I can push a button to go on the menu. I will tell you that in 2 seconds. And it just blew me away that I can watch that right now in Mexico. You're on channel 355. It's called CPS.
Yeah. There we go. Well, fantastic. Mike, you have made our night. Thank you very much. Our big hearty thanks to everybody who's watching down in Mexico. This has been a landmark night for our show. We're so glad. So not only in Canada and the U.S. are they watching, but they're watching in Mexico too. Hey, Mike, you keep watching and spread the word down in Puerto Vallarta that we're here every night on Sunday nights. You will, won't you?
I will. I'm here for another week, so I'm going to have the chance to watch next Sunday too.
Oh, terrific. Mike, I look forward to talking to you again, no matter where your travels take you. And thank you for calling in tonight from Puerto Vallarta. That's awesome. Let's go to line 3, and calling in from Toronto is Ike. Hi there, Ike. Welcome to our show. Have you got a question or a comment for Anne-Marie or Dr. Tarman?
Tarman?
Go ahead.
What's the difference between Suboxone and methadone, and which one would you recommend?
There we go, one of our general questions. Ike, I'm so glad that you picked up the phone, because we're here for that too. Dr. Tarman, go ahead.
Okay, well, both of them are opiates, synthetic opiates. They're opiates that are used to help people get off of other opiates, like usually Percocets or Oxy, or heroin, or any of the sort of illicit opiates. And methadone is a long-acting drug that has been used as a substitute that a doctor can prescribe, so it's considered a safer opiate to use. And the whole idea is that you give the person that drug and then eventually taper them off in a safe, contained way so that they can get off of their opiate addiction. And Suboxone is the more recent drug that does the same thing, but it's easier to get off of and has less side effects. And also, when a person's on methadone, they can still use drugs, but with Suboxone, it's a little harder. There's a ceiling effect, and so you can't get high on it when you're on it. So that's basically the difference.
Ike, did you have a follow-up question for Dr. Tarman?
Well, would you say that Suboxone then would be much better for quicker recovery, or an easier recovery?
Yes, I would. The thing about Suboxone is that your opiate need can't be that high. So if a person's been using a lot of drugs or they're on a high dose of methadone, Suboxone, you can only, for example, if you're on a methadone, you have to be on 30 milligrams or less in order for the Suboxone to work. But some people are on 80 milligrams, 100 milligrams, so they're not eligible yet until they've been tapered down. But it's really worth trying to taper down because it's a much easier drug to be on, Suboxone, and seems to be easier to get off of. Yeah.
And Ike, does that answer your questions tonight?
It did, and you know what? I love your show. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Yeah, we always say, Anne-Marie, that this is a safe haven for anybody to call in, to ask the questions, and we're here. Dr. Tarman is always great. So, as I mentioned, you know, a while ago, if you've got some family members that are struggling, or perhaps maybe you're struggling, you know, we want to celebrate your recovery as well. And the first step is sometimes picking up the phone. So we're here. Our toll-free lines are available as we celebrate Recovery and Recovery Day in Canada. So Anne-Marie, you know, isn't it great when you got people that are calling in from Mexico saying that they were also at your Vancouver event? It must make you feel good that you're reaching the people that you want to reach.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty amazing. I mean, yeah, I don't think I could be much more grateful for the way that the community has responded to this. You know, the government has responded positively, the recovery community has responded positively, and I think it can only continue in a positive way. It's a movement whose time has come.
Have you thought in the future about where you would like it to go, or what else you would like to see happen? I'm going to put you on the spot, but
that's all right.
You got plans?
Well, I mean, some of the goals that we have right now are just to have Recovery Month declared.
Very good.
It would be really nice for that to be in line with the United States. Federally, across the country. And when we were in Washington, actually, Lorinda and I met some of the U.S. government officials, and we got sort of a sneak peek bit of information that the UN is actually looking at a resolution to declare September International Recovery Month.
Wow.
So
very good.
We may have this in Canada, you know, without even, you know, sort of needing to do the groundwork ourselves. It may just end up happening if the UN puts this resolution through. So that would be, I mean, that would be just amazing. And that way, you know, I could come here and be at Recovery Day on one day, because we wouldn't all have to have it on the same day. We couldn't be celebrating and having all sorts of different recovery events throughout the month of September, which is what the United States has, right? They do a big launch and a kickoff, and then they have the rallies, and they do all sorts of different things. And
that's great.
So,
Dr. Tarman, I see you're in agreement over there.
Oh yeah, I'm just, like I said, I'm thrilled by this. You know, one of the other things that's happened historically is that when people are in recovery, it's often that they've sought out help through a 12-step program, which is essentially anonymous, and they're not really able to say, I'm in recovery and here's why. But this is a way to get around that, to say, I am in recovery, and you know, you don't have to avoid the press and you know, the public display, because you can be open about it. Like, it just opens doors that have been shut previously.
Yeah, there's great literature that exists that comes out from Faces and Voices of Recovery in the United States that teaches people, and that's why I introduced myself the way I did at the beginning when you asked me my story. And there are ways to speak about your recovery without breaking the beautiful traditions of the 12-step programs. It's not one or the other. It can be both. You're allowed to speak publicly about your recovery. Anyone can.
So what's the difference in how you would define yourself now versus how you would have in the past? Like, what's the difference that you're saying?
Well, the messaging is, I'm a person in long-term recovery, and for me that means I haven't used drugs or alcohol for 5 years, but the person who is speaking would just insert the name of the drug or alcohol, or both, that they used, and the number of years that they've been in recovery, and then they would, instead of us defining what recovery is, the person in recovery gets to describe what recovery means for them, and gets to tell you know, when they're telling their story, they can say, well, it means this, it means that, it means that I've got my family back, it means that I've got my relationship back, or you know, whatever it has meant to them. And you know, I'm an upstanding member of my community now. I'm paying my taxes again, or whatever. And so it can mean something different to every single person. But it's about identification. Now, when that person is in a 12-step meeting, they can still identify themselves in their meeting as whatever they are.
I see.
But when they're speaking to the public or to the press, that's how they would identify themselves.
I see. So rather than, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm a drug addict, it's, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm a recovering.
And that's all about the public perception that we've been talking about, because the public perception of what an alcoholic or an addict is still probably very negative. If you identify yourself as a person in long-term recovery and you tell the person that what that means is that you're not using drugs or alcohol anymore, then the person has a much, or the press or whoever has a much better understanding of where you're at in your life. You're not still struggling with your addiction. You've you've managed to stay clean and sober.
Yeah.
We're going to take another short break here on Living Clean, Living Well, but when we come back, more from Anne-Marie McCullough and Dr. Vera Tarman, plus we've got Benny from Toronto and Dave from Midland on hold. We'll be back to take more of your phone calls right after this.
It's scary to think that you're going to live the rest of your life without drugs and alcohol when it's all you've depended on. But there is hope. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and treatment allowed me the chance to ask for the help that I needed in order to believe that I could live a sober life. I got the help and support that I needed, and even now that I've left, I still have that support there.
Hello, I'm Ellen Campbell, the CEO and founder of the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness. As a charity, we depend on viewers such as yourself to support the programs for First Nations, women and children, anti-bullying, and elder abuse. I invite you to visit our website, see what you can do to share. Any donation over $20 will receive a tax receipt. Thank you so much for all your support.
Statistics state that it is likely you know a victim of abuse. It could be a friend, a relative, a colleague. It could even be you. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys will be sexually abused before they reach the age of 18. Please give them hope. Help us make it stop. Go to abusehurts.com and give to the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness.
Welcome back, everybody. Tonight we're celebrating recovery. I said at the top of the show we're celebrating it in Canada, in the U.S., and tonight we got our first phone call from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. So we're very, very pleased about that. So we're celebrating recovery wherever you are seeing our show tonight on CTS. So let's go back to our phone lines. We're talking with Dr. Vera Tarman tonight and Anne-Marie McCullough from the Orchard Recovery Centre on Bowen Island in Vancouver, just off the coast of Vancouver. Let's go now to line 4, and Benny's calling in from Toronto tonight. Hi there, Benny. Thanks for your patience and holding. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm hoping that this is a good connection because between the panel that you have tonight, I am extraordinarily pleased to be able to actually address you in as much as I was part of recovery in Toronto for the first year, which was completely inspired by Anne-Marie through a friend of mine, Leonard, and through we were able to actually be able to bring Dr. Tarman on, and I can only tell you that when she stood up very strongly and proudly said and quoted Freddie Mercury, "We are the champions," that the crowd that was there went absolutely wild. So we're looking very much forward to, and we're in the onset of building for the 2014 celebration of Recovery Day, and we were very, very pleased to be part of being part of a nationwide celebration. And it really was a celebration. Dr. Tarman, I think that you can speak to what it was like in that park that day.
Yeah, Toronto. You want to speak to the
definitely
the way that it was?
Oh yeah, it was just a really wonderful experience. I mean, mostly I think we were all surprised at how well it was received, and it was really well organized. I mean, the organizers did a great job. I know that you did a great job, but the Toronto crowd did a great job. They got. I was surprised at all the politicians that they got, all the speakers. There was poetry, there was music. It was just amazing. And I'm really looking forward to next year. And I have to tell you that I was really honored to be able to speak, and I'm really honored to be asked to speak next year. I mean, it's a great thing to be part of. I'm really, really excited about this.
And we've had Leonard on the show on the phone.
Yes.
And he came on and told us about what he had planned and everything. Vinny, thank you so much. I was asking for other people to call in and tell us about their experiences right across Canada. Vinny, thank you very much for telling us about your experiences in Toronto. Let's go now to line 1, and Dave's calling in from Midland. Hello there, Dave.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome.
I think this is a great thing, having Recovery Month and Recovery Day.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what day it is. Is it the 30th of September or the 8th of September?
The 8th.
The 8th?
Right?
In the first year, it was on September 30th in Vancouver. And the second year in 2013, because we had so many cities, we had to sort of pick a date that all the cities could agree on. And we chose September 8th. It really just needed to be in the month of September because that is Recovery Month in the U.S. And we are hoping to have Recovery Month declared in Canada. So for next year, I think many cities will have their events on different days with the intention of it, again, being a national monthly declaration.
Dave,
great.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like to say that I'm on a path of recovery, but I also like to say that I'm on a path of discovery. Because I'm discovering some talents I have that I never knew I had, and I'm discovering life that I didn't live when I was using and drinking. I saw, like I heard the one gentleman say, I celebrate recovery every day, and I have no problem telling people that I'm in recovery, and I don't break the tradition because it's not at the level of press, radio, or film.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm well known in the community I live in because I work in the field now. I work as a peer support worker at Waypoint Mental Health Center, and I also work in Central Recreation there, and it's opened a whole new world for me.
Oh, that's wonderful, Dave. It's always good to hear from you. Thank you very much for your thoughts on this, and we celebrate you. Let's go now to line 2. Vinny's calling in tonight from Ottawa. Hello there, Vinny. Welcome to our show.
How are you?
We're doing fine, Vinny. Have you got a question or a comment?
I just appreciate your show and all that you guys do.
Oh, thank you. We're very proud of what we do here. And, it's great to have a community. And you're part of that community. And Dave from Midland is part of that community. And everybody else that has called in. Ivan, he's a longtime viewer of the show. Thanks for that, Vinny. Do you have some thoughts on Recovery Day, possibly becoming Recovery Month? Were you at the Recovery Day celebrations in Ottawa? Just curious.
I'm just wondering why in your hearts do you do what you do?
Wow. I think it's different for everybody that is on the show. I'll start out because I'm host. In my heart, I'm a longtime volunteer with the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness, and I come from news and sports, and I've always wanted to get into talk television, and I had an opportunity to do this show. And although I don't have a background in addictions and substance abuse, I certainly knew television. So my part of giving back to the community is just hosting the show, and I call myself the TV traffic cop. So I get us on and off the air, and I make sure that our phone callers like you are on the air. And I've got a little earpiece here so that they keep me, my director and my production assistant and my great screen caller, everybody keeps us on time and makes sure that the commercials happen. So that's my contribution to the show. And I'll tell you, this show is some of the most rewarding work I have ever done in my life. And that was 14 years at TSN, the Sports Network. I worked at CP24 in Toronto, 680 News. I've done a lot of things, and this is one of the most rewarding I've ever done. How about you, Anne-Marie? Do you want to answer Vinny's question? Why do you do what you do?
I think I do what I do because I found, like the last caller said, I'm discovering myself in recovery. I was so disconnected from myself for so many years. And I just absolutely love sharing this gift with other people. And so it's, rewarding, inspiring, hopeful. It's everything that my life wasn't before. So that's why I do it.
And Dr. Tarman, you're in the area of addictions. I mean, you're a medical doctor, and you chose this to go into. So
that's true. Yeah.
Why don't you tell Vinny what your motivations are for doing this show?
You know, it just feels like I've been called to do this. It's an act of service. It feels like it's a gift that I was given, or an opportunity that I was given, and I feel such joy. I mean, when I went into medicine, I had no intentions of going into addiction medicine, but I just, the closer I got to the field, the warmer I felt and the more impassioned I feel. So I do it because it's joy. It's a joyful way to live. Yeah.
And Vinny, we thank you. You've been interviewing us tonight.
It's a great question.
It was a great question. And thank you so much for calling into this show. And I'm so glad that you watch as well here on CTS every Sunday night at 11:30 Eastern Time, and out 9:30 out in Vancouver. 10:30 out in Calgary. It doesn't matter where you are, and we've had phone calls from Newfoundland and down in the States, and tonight in Mexico, and you know, it's great. People are finding us, and the community is finding us, and that's terrific. I want to tell you quickly before I get back to Anne-Marie and Dr. Tarman and your phone calls as well. Next week we've got Canadian icon and a very famous singer from the 60s. His name is Bobby Curtola, and that name may ring a bell. His big hits were Fortune Teller and Hitchhiker way back when. Bobby's got quite the story to tell, and he is coming to us from Las Vegas. He will be appearing here, and of course, you know, he's got lots of stories. As I was saying, apparently he used to be a friend of Elvis, and we all know about his struggles, Elvis's struggles with alcohol and addiction and drugs. So it's going to be interesting to hear it from that side of the entertainment world. As well as Don Slesser will be here. He is a longtime friend of this show. He is in recovery himself, very proud of it, and he is also an addictions therapist and a counselor. So Don Slesser will be here next week, so we're looking forward to that. So Anne-Marie, as we take a look at the future and where this can all be heading towards, where do you stand now in as far as getting Recovery Day moved into Recovery Month? How's it looking?
Well, I mean, it looks really good. You know, we've had support from our MP out in West Vancouver, John Weston. He's been a very big supporter of fitness and health for his riding. So he's worked with the Orchard and worked with Lorinda and I on a variety of other initiatives already. So he's very supportive. He's already proposed and spoken to our federal health minister about Recovery Day and about Faces and Voices of Recovery. So we have support there. We have support at so many different levels of the community with, like I said, all those different associations that have supported us. So, I mean, I really don't see it being, you know, if it happens. It's just a matter of time. Exactly. And, you know, I would love to see every major city and every province having a celebration next year. I mean, we were very close to that this year. I think the only provinces that didn't were Manitoba and Quebec. So we had a maritime representation, we had all the other provinces. So we're very close. I would just like to see it just keep getting bigger and bigger, and for, you know, for nobody to feel that concern about coming forward to Recovery Day, because it's not just for the addict in recovery, it is for the family that supports them and the friends and the allies.
Yeah. So you said Manitoba and Quebec, they weren't able to get
we didn't have events in those cities, or in those provinces rather. But I know that the folks at Portage, who have locations across Canada, I was contacted by Montreal, and I know that they will definitely be working hard to get an event in Montreal this year.
We get phone calls from Montreal, Dr. Tarman, you may remember, and we've also had phone calls from Winnipeg before, so it would be lovely, put out the challenge to those provinces to join in on this great celebration as we celebrate recovery. Dr. Tarman, your thoughts on the Toronto celebration, and you know, you said we've already got like the politicians coming out and things like that.
Yeah, you know, I the way that I would like to see this is, you know, we have Caravana, which is celebrating different cultures. We have the Gay Pride celebrations, which now are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to celebrate gay lifestyle. Yeah. It's time for recovery to have the same kind of exposure, the same kind of celebration, the same kind of parades, the same kind of anybody coming to celebrate. That's what I'm looking forward to.
To take away that stigma.
Yes.
It's overcoming a disease. It's
Yes.
nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about.
That's
right?
right. And in fact, there are some hidden strengths that we can actually bring out.
Tell us.
Like, for example, that recklessness, that willingness to break through the norm. That's what's made the explorers. That's what's made the inventors. That's what's made the artists.
Yeah.
You know, it's what I'm saying. You know, we are the champions. These are the people who have broken through the mold and have created society. Let's take our birthright. The thing that I say in my speech there, the final statement is, it's our fate to be great. Let's celebrate recovery.
Hey, awesome. And you can get a copy of Dr. Tarman's, Dr. Tarman's speech at Recovery Day in Toronto. It was held on September 8th in Recovery Wire magazine. So just go to their website and request your free copy. The latest edition is out with Dr. Tarman's We Are the Champions speech written in there. So we're going to take another final break here on Living Clean, Living Well, but we still have more still to come. Don't forget, next week, right from Las Vegas, we're going to have Bobby Curtola in the studio along with Don Slesser. I'd also like to tell you that Glenn Allen, who was the original founder of this show, Living Clean, he is now seen Friday nights at 10 p.m. on Rogers Cable 10 in the Hamilton area, and he'd like to invite you to watch his show called The Advocate. So I'm going to be back to wrap up our show right after this.
It's scary to think that you're going to live the rest of your life without drugs and alcohol when it's all you've depended on. But there is hope. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and treatment allowed me the chance to ask for the help that I needed in order to believe that I could live a sober life. I got the help and support that I needed, and even now that I've left, I still have that support there.
We have been so pleased to have all of you contribute tonight, as well as Anne-Marie McCullough. We've been working on this gal for a couple of months to come out and visit us. I'm really hoping she comes again. Anne-Marie, your final thoughts.
You know what, I think just building on what you said a few minutes ago, Teresa, I would love to see, I just want to challenge everyone in Canada who is in recovery to find out about the Recovery Day events. We have a website, recoveryday.ca, all the information is there. Check it out, come out next year, support, you know, the people, not just the people in recovery, but get your families there, get your friends there. Let's make Recovery Day 2014 just the biggest and best event that it can possibly be.
There's the challenge. Dr. Tarman, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts really, Recovery Day is the opportunity to look at where you might be feeling bad about yourself and turn that around and see where your strengths are and celebrate in a community the extraordinariness of you.
Very good.
Yeah.
So folks, that's it for this edition of Living Clean, Living Well. My thanks to Anne-Marie McCullough from the Orchard Recovery Center in British Columbia. Dr. Tarman will be back in the house 2 weeks from now, and I'll be back with Bobby Curtola next week. See you then.